What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode on The Black Experience. I'm your host, Ermias Hagos here, and today, y'all, I am back in the city of Bellingham. I am back on Western's campus in the DMC with two very special guests with me. Before I start, this podcast has been going for 2+ years, and for everyone that has supported me on this journey, I'm so thankful for you. Thank you so much. If you're new here, welcome to the team. Welcome to the journey. This has been an honor and a pleasure. This is where the podcast started, right here in the city of Bellingham, and now it's expanded to the Pacific Northwest as a whole. So thank you for watching, listening, whatever time zone you may be in, and thank you. I always say I have two special guests or either one special guest with me, y'all, but today is actually a very special one. Today, y'all, I have the mayor of Bellingham, Mayor Kim Lund, who is serving as the 23rd mayor of the city and the second ever woman to serve in this position. Alongside Councilmember Skip Williams, who's representing the 4th Ward, who started his term in January of 2022 and is still rerunning now for another term as his term is ending in December of this year. Mayor Kim Lund started in January 1st of 2024. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to get into, so without further ado, y'all, let's put our hands together and let's bring up Mayor Lund and Councilmember Skip. How you guys doing?
We're good. I'm happy to be here. We've been talking about this for a few months,
Yes.
and it's great that it's finally happening.
And I'm happy to be here again.
Yeah. We had
Just having this conversation with you, and now that we have the mayor here, it's really going to be a good session.
And again, I was telling you guys, this is a dream come true because, like the mayor said, we've been planning this for months, and I know how crazy your schedule is, Mayor. I know how crazy mine's is, but I can only imagine what yours and you too as well, Council Member, is. So thank you guys, both you all, for taking the time to come here and spend it with me. Before we start, how are you both doing?
Well, today is a day, so I think in full transparency, as I'm sitting here right now, it's been a day of not great news for our community. We had a immigration enforcement action that looks like has impacted 39 individuals, which means 39 families and people that loved those people. So lots to process with that news, and we additionally got some news today about some funding that's being held back for Head Start, which is, such an essential program at such a pivotal point in a young child's life. And so, I think the last 3 weeks, if I'm really honest, we've been seeing these impacts roll out almost on the daily, and but today I'm feeling it. So I'm happy to be here, and I can't wait to see where this conversation goes. But I think it's important to acknowledge just how I'm arriving in this chair right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
How you doing, Council Member?
I never thought I'd see days like this and the things that are happening as a result of the last election. I have lived my life thinking the struggle always happens, but I never thought it would go backwards like it seems to be doing right now. And that bothers me. And the part that bothers me most is that, like I said to you, and I said this to some other people too, the path forward hasn't been clearly defined yet. What are we fighting against when it's coming from all angles and all different places? That's very, very frustrating and disappointing.
I'm very thankful that you guys still made time because the timing of that you can't really predict.
No.
And when it happens, it's like there's only so much that maybe I can do because I'm not in a position of power maybe, but I can't imagine also for you both that you guys you guys are in a position of power, but it's also still like, how much can you guys do to change that? You know, with the federal government now, we having a new president now, and things are just have just drastically changed compared to the previous administration. So, thank you guys for admitting that and coming here anyway. My heart is heavy, especially for Head Start Mayor, because I was telling you, you know, being born in Eritrea, coming here to the States when I was 3.5, almost 4, you know, Head Start, I still have those old pictures of me with a cap and gown, and then comparing that 20 years later to now, graduating Western last year, and it was such a pivotal moment for me because of the, you know, it was those classmates of mine that actually taught me English. I didn't speak English coming in here, and it was such a pivotal moment in my life and in many children's lives. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, if we want to be moving this nation forward and investing in people, programs like Head Start are like some of the best way we can be investing and using our monies. So it's just stunning to see that we're making, you know, do I believe government can be more efficient? Of course I do. I advocate for excellent local government all the time. Like, if we want government to be providing these services, we need to have confidence that government's doing the right thing. So we have that obligation to the people that we serve. But some of the decisions that we're seeing come out right now, it's not about efficiency, and it feels like there's a lot of cruelty. So
Certainly.
yeah.
Well, what a way to start the podcast with some heavy hearts, right?
I know.
But hey, you know, it's the reality. So let's kick it off a little bit if you both want to. I know, Skip, you know, the audience knows you. They remember you. But if you both want to kick it off, we'll start with you, Mayor, talking about a little bit, just give the audience a little introduction of who you are, what your position is, kind of how you got into that role and all that good stuff.
Yeah, happy to. Well, Bellingham's my hometown. I grew up here. My dad grew up in the county, so he went to Mount Baker High School. I grew up on Alabama Hill,
Next to me.
close to where Skip lives today. His neighborhood was my childhood neighborhood, and went to Roosevelt and Whatcom Middle School and then Seaholm High School, and loved this place dearly. And as I was moving forward as a student in the public school system here, I had so many educators that invested in me and propelled me, and I'm a first-generation college student. So both on my dad and my mom's side, I'm the first person to go on to higher education, and I was connected to that future because of the teachers that believed in me and helped me see that future for myself. And so, you know, I'm incredibly grateful for that. And I went on to the University of Washington, where I got my degree in chemical engineering, and people were telling me, you know, well, you're good at math, you should think about engineering. And I didn't know any engineers. My family didn't know any engineers. So when I heard that word, I only knew it as it related to the person who drove the train. And I'm like, I don't think I want to drive a train.
Yeah.
Like, I had no concept of even what that whole field was. But I think that is typical of a first-gen, you know, college student's experience. Yeah. You don't know which you don't know. And so got to the University of Washington, ended up in chemical engineering, and went on to work at Intel Corporation. And that was a fun time in the late 90s, because the semiconductor industry and the explosion of personal computing and the internet was being born in that era. It was
prime
a really,
time right there.
it was prime time. Intel was a Fortune 50 company at that time, and I learned, I think, a lot of important lessons. So that's served me well today, especially in the role that I am, and particularly about the importance of culture and investing in people and training and systems and tools. But that culture piece, like really knowing where are we going and how are we connecting people to purpose in their work. So that has stayed with me throughout. And then I had the chance to stay home with kiddos, and then how I met Skip, and began, I think my path to public service was really at the Bellingham Public Schools Foundation. I was a board member and then served as the director there for many years. And that was my first real tangible community building, I think. And having grown up here, I had the hubris of thinking I knew Bellingham, but I didn't at all, because I knew what my experience was. I knew my lived experience. But doing that work, especially our Yes Card program, which is essentially a micro loan to families and students for almost anything. It's why we call it the Yes Cards. Yeah. We want to say yes. And doing that and seeing the scope of need and what people are needing support for was, it was really hard. Eye opener, heart expander, all of that. And getting to know neighborhoods across this community even better. And I think that was really how I wanted to continue to invest in community and kind of combine that for-profit experience with nonprofit. And it seemed like local government was where those two worlds collided. A lot of intersectionality in government. Awesome. Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Amazing. What about you, Skip?
What about me? Well, I wasn't born in Bellingham. I came to Bellingham I came up here to work in 1989. And but I came from Tacoma. I was born and raised in Tacoma. My family on my father's side goes back to 1905.
Wow. 100 plus years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I grew up in a family that was somewhat community focused and part of the civil rights movement in the day back in the 50s and 60s. And that's the kind of that's what instilled in me this sense of service. I was surrounded by people like that went on in their time, in my parents' generation, to public service. In the legal world, one man, Jack, his name is Jack Tanner. He went from working with the Puyallup Indian tribes to being a federal judge.
Wow.
Back in the fishing rights struggles, and then eventually Jimmy Carter nominated him to be a federal judge. Those were the people that brought me along. People like that, and it gave me that sense. And when I was getting ready to leave school, you're absolutely right. I had no idea how many of my teachers saw things in me that I didn't quite see in myself yet. And when I graduated, it was like I didn't have the best GPA when I graduated, let's say. And they're giving the awards out, and somehow my name got called from service to the high school that I was going to.
Wow.
And I never knew anything. I never knew anybody even noticed those things. And getting that, and then with the role models I had, it just pushed me forward. That's why I wanted to become a school teacher. See, because my niche was going to be helping kids grow and develop, and music was my vehicle for doing that. Could have been math, it could have been social studies, could have been science, engineering, who knows. But music was my talent. But my life's goal was to just help people grow and develop. And that's been with me throughout all my life.
Wow. And that can translate to anything too,
Correct.
Right? Music, school,
Correct.
Whatever it is.
When I moved up here, I was working with an organization called the Washington Education Association. And that's a fancy word for teachers union. But what I saw myself doing was teaching teachers how to deal with their issues themselves. I didn't have to do it. I mean, I did the working with them and
Right.
teaching them. But when it came down to brass tacks, they had to have a relationship with the people that they were working with on the other side of the table. And that's how you solve problems.
Yeah. Certainly.
You see, one example I had was the team I was working with wanted me to go in and say something about an issue, and I said, no, I'm not the one that has to do that. You have to do it because you live here.
Right.
You have to see the superintendent and the principal and every day. I get to go home at the end of the day, and they don't see me for maybe a couple of weeks. So we went back in, and they weren't expecting this.
No. Yeah.
But I said, Bill has something to say. And the guy who was feeling like I can't do it, he did it, and the issue got settled.
That's really good. I wanna touch real quick on what the mayor said. I also studied engineering. I actually studied manufacturing and engineering. And so when I was peeping both your guys' profile on City of Bellingham, when I saw engineer, I was like, wow, that's gonna be something. I definitely got to bring that up.
Yeah.
I didn't know I had a fellow engineer, but I mean, from engineer to now mayor, I mean, that's two different worlds.
In some ways, it definitely is, and in some ways, I think there's a lot of overlap. At its core, I think engineering teaches you a way to look at a challenge and break it down and think about it in discrete components and how are we tackling this problem. It teaches you to be good with numbers, which helps when one of the duties of the mayor is setting the city budget. So that's been helpful. So I definitely see a lot of parallels. And I was a process engineer, so I had a team that worked in the 24-hour-a-day, 365 semiconductor factories outside of Portland, Oregon. Wow. And so that team leadership experience, I think, has been really invaluable, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly, and I've even seen the parallels with this podcast too. If you were to ask my parents, they always knew I had an interest in engineering. Even when I came here, the Hammerman in downtown Seattle,
yes.
he was my inspiration.
Right
when I
on.
first saw him.
Let's hear it for public art.
Right?
For
Yeah.
inspiration.
Come on. Yeah, he's
yes.
amazing. But yeah, the way engineers think, the problem solving has helped me, with, if I come across an editing problem or whatever, just being able to just overcome and just persisting on and not giving up.
And persistence for sure. I mean, there was
Oh
a lot of suffering in the process.
A lot of late nights.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad the audience kind of has an idea of who you guys are and what you guys do. We were talking a bit about the federal government and the new administration that's now in place. On the topic of DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, obviously this current administration is seeking to gut it out completely, cut it out on the federal level. With that happening, how have you guys been responding to that, both, for the city of Bellingham and if federal cuts were to happen, from the federal government, when it comes to that, how are you guys processing that and dealing with that right now?
Well, post the, pre-election and where we sit today, nothing has changed about Bellingham's values and who we are as a community. And the way that we're...
I would agree with that statement.
We're still honoring this place and the people who live here exactly the way we were before the election in November. And I think an important change we've made in the mayor's office is actually bringing in a manager of equity and belonging. So we're trying to elevate this work. And I think we spend a lot of time trying to understand the impacts of changes that are rolling out from the federal level right now. but we spend a lot of time, what can we do today in response to it?
Yeah.
And that's at the local level. And so, we own what we can do right here, right now, and, maintaining a place that's inclusive for all residents. And, especially as mayor, when the police chief walks in the room with me, they say, "What's up, boss?" And so I take that really serious, that, I'm responsible for what policing looks like in our community. And I think that, we want to continue to have that focus in this moment. It's actually hard for me to see the pictures today of the federal enforcement officers, because they're wearing police on the back of their vests when they're taking
They
these
are.
actions. And that is, I think it's important for anyone that's listening to the podcast, that is not your local municipal police force that is doing that. We've created a work group to ensure compliance with the Keep Washington Working Act, which ensures there is no federal enforcement or cooperation for those activities. And what I think is important to re-emphasize is that no matter who you are, no matter what your immigration status is, or anything else, you can call 911 and seek the help you need. If you've been a victim of a crime, if you're having a medical emergency, the last thing I would want is for someone to see these pictures, especially here in Bellingham today, and not feel like they can access support from the city services that they need.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we have, we maintain committed to who we are and our values and that theory of equal protection. We've implemented a new process at the city in terms of boards and commissions and all of the advisory groups. We have more than 20 groups that get around tables and help shape how the city is going about its business and its planning and allocating resources. And we need to diversify the voices that are around those tables. And so we used to have a process of, if you held an advisory seat, it was enough just to raise your hand and say, "I'd like to continue to serve." And what we're trying to do is communicate those opportunities to the whole community. When a term is expiring on any group, letting it be known that anyone can raise their hand for that service.
Sure.
And we've been working with the Racial Equity Commission to, help push out in diverse circles those opportunities, and trying to hold space in our process for consideration for everyone to be part of those conversations. So that's one important way that I think we're trying to change who's in the community and around the table in our conversations.
And she's absolutely right. Our history has been the good old boy system.
Yeah.
And that good old boy system did not include very many people of color at all. And when I came here in the 80s, like I think I've said this to you, but in some meetings we've been at, I felt like I could count the people of color, particularly black people, like on maybe two hands.
Yeah.
And there was never a feeling of a community here. There was never a feeling of unity. And there was the community here in general accepted us being here, but there wasn't a piece of glue that glued us together
Sure.
as people of color, as black people, that kept us as a group, or as a group of citizens that deserve to be acknowledged and be seen as a part of a larger community, rather than me as an individual. I mean, I can get along with anybody, but I'm one person, And there's a ton of other people that don't have that same acknowledgement, I would say. And today, I see more people of color here than I have ever seen. And it can't have any effect except for diversification of this community
Certainly.
Yeah.
as a whole. It's like things are growing and things are changing.
Change is slow, though.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
Oh,
one
yeah.
thing, part of how I was prepared to hold this office was I spent 5 years on the County Planning Commission. And it was because I had a neighbor who served on the county council that says, I think you would be good at this work. And it's that explicit invitation, right? To see yourself doing that. And so I think that's a critical part
Yes,
of
it
how
is.
we break up that,
Oh, yeah.
that how we've always done things is, really giving those invitations to people, like, see yourself in this work, step into this. You belong at the table.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I got here. Finally. I'd been retired for 10, 15 years. Somebody came and sat down with me and said, you would be good at this. Think about it.
Yeah. And you took it on.
Well, eventually, yeah. But the funny part is, it was a person that 20 years ago, I had the same conversation with him.
Wow.
And said, you would be good at this. You need to think about doing that, being on the city council.
Yeah. And here you guys are now. It's almost like a little nudge that someone gives you, right?
Yeah.
Because I felt that too in kind of the work I do, where someone's like, hey, this podcasting you're doing, keep it going, take it seriously. I'm like, I don't know about it. But then you put yourself in there, and I don't know if you both believe in like a purpose in life.
Yeah.
I do. And so it almost seems like you try it out and then you figure out you're pretty good at it, and then you're like, oh, this might be my calling, I guess, in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels good when you're kind of in that flow, like
Certainly.
things just are working. It doesn't mean you're not working hard. It just
Right.
means you're not struggling in
And-
the work, right,
Yeah.
as much. Yeah.
And by the fact that there's a purpose behind you doing this. That's
Yeah.
important.
Right.
I
It
think
isn't just you're doing a podcast to be doing a podcast. You're doing it with a sense of purpose behind it.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a mission behind it.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. And it's not easy too. It's not always easy. Like,
Yeah.
this may be something that you enjoy doing, but it's also because you enjoy doing it that it gets you through those tough days or tough times, such as the day you're having right now, Mayor, sadly, and you're able to push past that, because especially when, I know, Skip, you were mentioning this, it's like when you realize the work you're doing is greater than you and you're having impact towards other people. I mean, it's always a great feeling whenever I help someone,
Yeah. Actually, some of the most, it's almost been, it's just been on loop in my brain since taking office, and I'm really grateful that Chairman Hilaire shared these words with me early on after winning election, and he said, you belong to the people now. And he told the story, his father before him was also chairman of Lummi Nation, and he, after his election to that office, he went to go tell Tony's grandmother the news. His father went to go share the news, and she was on her deathbed, and she was dying, and she, looked over at Daryl and said, well, you belong to the people now. And so that's been a family, I guess, mantra or belief that's been passed down. And
Wow.
I take a lot of solace in that, even when it's days like this. Like, this is about public service.
Yes, it
It
is.
is service to this community and the people that are here. And even when I'm really tired, or I fall back on those words, you belong to the people now. And I find great comfort in them.
That is a powerful statement.
Yeah.
That's something I would, pace in my bathroom, mirror and look at that, because that is something. Let's talk a little bit Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm fine.
Let's talk a little bit about representation. And now I'm kind of bring it a little bit to more the black population here in Bellingham and Whatcom County as a whole. I know, Skip, you were talking about growing up. I mean, seeing those role models in music, in public service, motivated you and encouraged you to keep to go along that path. Even me, for myself, meeting other Eritrean or black engineers or other podcasters has motivated me to be like, oh, this is something that I could do. How would you say, Mayor, and then Council Member, you as well, how is the city of Bellingham working to ensure more, there's so many black professionals, black restaurant owners and creatives in Bellingham that I've met, that I've had on the podcast. How is the city, what actions is it taken to give them a seat at the table? Kind of what we were talking about, how saying, hey, you belong here. How is the city working to do that?
I think an important way, and I'm just, I feel like I'm arriving on the scene after years of investment in the work, but Whatcom County and the city, like we've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 3 years. The county has matched that investment to fund and bring into being the Racial Equity Commission. And that body is, it's still new and it's still finding its way and getting its legs. But when I sit in that room with the members of that group, that's got to be one of the diversest rooms in Whatcom County. There's a lot of perspectives, a lot of races, a lot of everything that's brought different identities that are in that space. And that group is an official advisory body to the city on matters. So
And the county.
And the county, yeah.
And it's still in its infancy in terms of organizational things.
Sure.
But she's absolutely right. The people in that room are committed. There's a lot of energy, and a number of them have been living here for quite a while. And they were just isolated, and now things are coming at a point where the commitment is to deal with these issues now and deal with them in a way that helps people grow, that helps the people that are not people of color understand all that.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm personally very committed to that group's work, and we had the chance to do a whole weekend together.
Yeah.
And it's hard because that means you're 12 continuous work days on when you work all weekends.
Yeah.
But it's good. That was some good stuff. I left that feeling hopeful. So yeah.
Well, it feels good for me to hear too that there is work being done. That there's people from all backgrounds coming together and doing this too. Because like we said, representation definitely does matter.
And I want to acknowledge we have a long way to go,
Yes.
right? And especially, I think if we're going to talk about the
understatement.
Black experience in Bellingham, we have a long way to go. I mean, we have made change, and Bellingham looks different today, but it doesn't look all that different.
Well,
if I'm being real
and
honest.
we're gonna tap into some that happened
Yeah.
last year too. I mean, I think last time I checked, what is it, like 1.4% black population in Whatcom County?
Is it 1.4?
1.4.
I
think
thought
it
it
went.
was 1.8, but it could be.
Did it go back down?
I don't know.
Yeah, it
maybe-
must have
yeah.
dropped. You know.
I was
No,
talking
I
to-
don't know.
to Russ about it.
I haven't looked lately, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard 2%. Last I checked, 1.4. But a lot more work to be done, certainly. But the fact that something has started is what matters, right? We've
Yeah.
started it. That first building block is there. Now let's keep going. Let's keep doing that.
right.
Yes.
Is important. Accountability.
Yes.
I know this is a big part because, from my experience, I've never been in a political position of power, not really my interest. But to anyone that does do it, I give them a lot of credit because it's it's by no means easy, right? A lot of criticism from people, and some of the things that people usually bring up is that accountability. Okay, if we have this person as our mayor or this person as a council member or a president or whatever it is, are they going to be accountable to the promises they made? Like promises made, and then are there going to be promises kept? How can the people of Bellingham, particularly more black residents, hold you both accountable for any promises or policies that you guys have had or said, and ensuring that those, at least you guys took some effort to do those things and to make those a reality and have taken those action steps. What would you guys say to those?
I'm going to jump in on that one because when I was spoken to about doing this, my image of doing this work was that you run for office, and there was a song from the 70s or 80s by the Temptations, and one of the lines in the song was, "Vote for me and I'll set you free. I've got all the answers. I've got everything. You just have to vote for me and I'll make it happen."
Right.
That was kind of a going thing back in those days, back in the 70s and the early 80s. The song itself was called "A Ball of Confusion." But, and what I've lived my life doing differently than you in terms of solving problems, but it's the same thing. You have to take the time, figure out what the problem is, and that helps you come to the right answer. You can't walk in the door with, "I've got the solutions." Well, sometimes you have to, but you can't walk in the door thinking, "I know everything." Because 9 times out of 10 you don't. And you need to sit and listen to everybody's viewpoint or everybody's take on things and look for that common ground that'll make the solution the right one that works. And that's how I live. That's how I live my life. Sometimes it drives people crazy because they want to just jump at something.
Yeah.
But I'm more, we need to take the time, figure it out, and then we make the decision.
I really appreciate that about Skip. He's so steady, and he spends the time doing the real work, not just reacting. It's easy to react.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Skip really is deliberate and does his homework. And
Yeah.
yeah.
The thing that's reactionary stuff is you're reacting to the group that's making the most noise. And I always have these little sayings that I throw out, sometimes to you. And it's like, one of them is this thing a mile wide and an inch deep? Meaning it's making a lot of noise, but the reality of what this noise is all about is about that thin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to it's that thin and it's making some noise. And
That's a good analogy. I like
say
that.
what?
That's a good analogy. I like
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
and I believe in I believe that our organizational culture in the city historically has somewhat been listening to the noise, but the noise is an inch deep.
Yeah.
And I would, that's one of the things I admire about her, is that she doesn't react to that inch deep stuff.
I think it relates to accountability too, is showing up
Showing
for
up.
conversations like this, showing up in spaces where people can ask the hard questions. And, I think holding space for conversation like this, like that's where the richness is, and that's where real learning can take place. And we can, even if the conversations with someone who sees, a subject very differently than I'm seeing it, holding space and being comfortable with nuance and being in the gray area, I think that's part of how we move forward together, because it's easy that being reactive, being on an extreme, like it's hard to be uncomfortable and trying to work through something along, but that's what's going to lead to better outcomes if we can really hold space for being uncomfortable and then just trying to move forward together.
You end up finding in that space that even if you're listening to people that disagree with you on things, 9 times out of 10, you're going to find something in that person that you have common ground with, and they don't even know it yet. But through that process, because you find you have common interests, you find that you dig deeper into the problem than normal. And that's what, once again, that's what leads to solid decisions. See? Not just, oh my God, we got to react to this or react to that.
Actually take the time, because, I mean, we live in such a divided nation. Oh my goodness, is it so divided? And I always wonder, it's like, if people are afraid to talk to the other side, be it politically or whatever, then you won't really get far, because at the end of the day, the way I see it is like, we're all human, right? So let's have a conversation with the other side. Let's see their perspective. Let's see where they're coming from, and see those commonalities, and see where we have middle ground, and see how we can agree. Because I think everyone, I guess, likes to think that they have the solution, and they think their solution is the best. And it's really saying, okay, so you think this is the best, I think this is the best. How can we infuse those things together and kind of do it in a common ground way? And sometimes you can't really, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But at least if you can't, you come out with an understanding about why you can't.
Yeah.
And it's not that one person's bad and the other one's good. It's just you walk out of it with a higher sense of understanding. And maybe at some point you come back together and things have changed.
Right.
A little bit, see? That's a key thing. I always advocate for doing all of these things, even when we get a 500-page book on junk fees. But the purpose behind it was you go through this process and you listen to all the perspectives and all the sides. And in the end, when the final decision is made on this, whatever topic is, nobody can say that you didn't listen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And came up, and you listen to all of that, and you come up with what you feel is the best solution to the situation. Because if you don't do that, and you walk in and say, okay, we won and you lost.
Yeah.
Sorry. The loser's going to find a way to mess it up.
They always do, right?
Yeah.
The haters, man, they're just always around.
Yeah.
I think there's some nuance in this conversation, though. Like, I've been interested in Ezra Klein's new book, Abundance, right now. And I've been listening to Ezra for years, and his podcast, at Vox and now at the New York Times. And, one of the things that they're critical of, though, is how much process. We want to do that listening. We want to be a little bit uncomfortable. We want to hear those perspectives. But at some point, we're going to have to make the decision to move the work forward, because we can use process as a tool to stall and to create scarcity of goods, and especially as it relates to housing, especially on the West Coast where progressive governments have been in charge for a long time. We have used that process as a tool to
Keep other things from happening.
yeah, to stall. And so we've created a scarcity of an essential public good as it relates to housing. So we own that work,
Yeah.
especially in the city right now. You know, when I'm coming out of a conversation about encampments or other challenging, things to be talking about, it draws back to housing as a scarcity, an essential good in our community. So getting upstream and creating, more supply, more abundance of
Yeah.
that scarce good is part of our essential work.
And,
So.
and see, just using that as an example, you're absolutely right. You cannot just go process forever. You've got to come to a point where, okay, we've had enough. We got to make a decision.
Yeah.
And Mayor Lund is right. We're paying the price for that now. I had a conversation with a person today who whose world is totally different than ours here, mainly because we're a big city.
Sure.
And that view that person expressed to me was, what have we done? You guys are just building apartments, and the road forward is single family housing. Period.
Yeah.
That's the only way forward to. And I'm just trying to sort that out in my head from him, going, the reality for me is no.
Yeah. I think sometimes, from the people's perspective, we do feel like sometimes, hey, why isn't, the mayor or the president or whatever position they're in, why aren't they doing enough? What is taking them so long? And you guys are kind of giving a perspective of there's still other stuff, other variables in the mix that maybe people don't see, which might take. But you guys are saying, though, your heart is still with the promises that you guys have made, when it comes to housing, when it comes to this, that. But there's always certain things, certain policies or stuff in the way.
Or certain roadblocks.
Or roadblocks.
Yeah.
Roadblocks.
Yeah.
There's not a magic wand for anything.
Sure.
You have to, but once again, like I said, you have to reach a point where enough is enough, but hopefully by the time you get there, you've got all the stuff you need to make that decision. And so on. So
That's solid. Yeah.
because that's the whole purpose of the process or of the effort is to get that information and get that reality so that you can make it, so that when you do make it, it sticks.
Yeah, certainly. I want to move us along to public safety and more so policing.
Yep.
I think it's 2025, and we've seen a lot of, police incidents, and probably more so now because we have body cameras. I think these have always happened. We've had George Floyd, obviously, in 2020. We've had Ahmaud Arbery, which hit close to home because I'm a runner myself, who I used to run cross country. Breonna Taylor, Michael Brown, countless others.
Yeah.
One of the guests I had on the podcast last year was Devontae Blow, and his son was Gabriel, which was involved in the hate crime incident that happened. I'm sure some of my viewers know, but if you don't know, June of 2024, Gabriel was 11 at the time. He was coming back from a school field trip, and he was unprovokingly attacked by a 42-year-old white man. It was punched in the face. He was arrested. The white man was arrested afterwards, but obviously that is trauma that poor kid probably will never forget. And when I had Devontae on, I asked him, how did you feel like the community responded? And he said the community came together like I've never seen. He was blown away with, he was like, I didn't even know there's this many black people, in the city. coming together and just supporting him. So when it comes to that being said, and that trust between law enforcement and residents, because we need law enforcement. We do. We can't isolate them, but at the same time, there needs to be that fair policing. Since that incident, Mayor, are there steps that you guys as a city have taken to ensure that there is that fair policing for black individuals, but also for everyone, of course?
Yeah. I think a critical way, we had policing as a whole nationally, and certainly even here in Bellingham, post George Floyd and the COVID era had a big depletion in their ranks. A lot of officers stepped away because they were vaccine averse and they didn't like the mandates for the vaccine, or they, they were feeling unappreciated in their job, or there's a whole host of factors, but numbers went down. And so we've been on a really intentional effort to recruit the best people to be police officers in this community that reflect who we are and how we want policing to evolve. And nationally, there's a movement to have 30% women by 2030. We're going to blow the doors off of that goal in BPD. Like, we're looking at expanding the women's locker room right now because we've been successful at bringing so many women in. And I'll just speak on behalf of my gender, that when we have more women, we have less incidences of violence. We're more likely to de-escalate. We're going to see things differently on the same call, and it leads to different outcomes in public safety. And that's also true when we have officers that represent different races. And we've been very good at diversifying. We have a lot more officers that speak Spanish as their first language and can do on-the-scene interpretation.
Some that even speak other languages.
Yes.
Sikhs.
I don't know what percentage of our police force is black right now, but I know in the last few academy graduations that we've been to, we have black officers joining our ranks. I think all of that is to the betterment of a true community policing model. When your police force looks like the community as a whole, we're going to have better outcomes.
Of course.
And there was a time where there was maybe 20 years ago, where there were a lot more black police officers here and officers of color. And matter of fact, one knew since she was a patrol officer, became the interim chief. That's Flo. But they all retired. They all did their time, and now they're gone. But what another piece that impacts our department, which I didn't realize until after I got elected, and well, actually, I talked to Flo, but after I got elected, and I found out what our department back then, this is a couple years ago, what they actually do in certain situations, what the policy actually is, the operational policy. And there have been maybe one or two incidents of folks goofing off that shouldn't have, that didn't bubble up to the top even. It was just kind of, and then it bubbled up to the top a year later, and the chief is going, what? Anyway. That being said, like, part of our department's criteria for hiring is you got to have 2 years of college under your belt.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference.
I bet it does.
I've done ride-alongs with officers that have their degrees in music and that were film school graduates.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a CSI that's a film school graduate. I love that.
Yeah.
It's,
and people with master's degrees.
Yeah.
I was at I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was at a training, the first one I went to, out at the airport, and they were having a seminar of this was a driving exercise, but the group would have an off time and they would have to sit and go over the new state laws and everything. And I'm sitting there listening to these patrol officers. And you would have thought you were listening to a group of lawyers. Literally. They had brains like you wouldn't believe. And they, well, what about, and how does this play into this, and how does this law interact with that law, because that law says that, I was surprised that, yeah.
The other piece I just wanted to add about something that I think makes Bellingham special, and we're a leader in Washington State, is that we have an embedded psychiatrist that in just the last few years.
For the police officers.
For the police officers. So if you, if you're on scene for a traumatic event, someone ends their life in front of you, or, you know, those officers have those kinds of days too, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so now we're creating a culture where it's okay to say, I need some help. I need help processing what I've seen today. Or, you know, in the past, there's a lot of those moments that stay with those officers, and we want to make sure that they're doing healthy processing of, you know, what their experiences have been, and you know, that's good for their families, it's good for the community, and it's good for those officers. So
one of the things that I saw, this is before you got here, but there's always a tendency to take something that's a national issue, or something happens like the George Floyd thing, or all of those situations, and you see that, and then you apply it to where you live, even if that's not reality. See, and I'm just using the phrase, you don't take the time to find out what this reality is.
Very true.
You know, and then if there is an issue, then you fix the issue. You don't say it happened in Minneapolis, so we got to take out the hatchet and cut everything and start all over. It's like, what are our policies? What are our practices? And the other day, I maybe you've heard this, but I was having a session with Waylon Potts, and I was Katie and Waylon and Ted.
Katie's the chief of police of Western
Yeah,
Washington
I actually had
University.
the pleasure of having her and
Yeah.
Terrence Cunningham on.
Awesome.
Yeah,
They're really dope.
Yes.
and we were having lunch talking, and one of the observations that Waylon made was that the structure of our department, meaning not the that the structure is the structure you would have if you had a much tinier city. And once again, I think that wasn't necessarily a deliberate thing. It's just, this is what we had.
Sure.
And so our city gets bigger, we make it bigger, without looking forward and thinking, okay, we're bigger, the need is changing, we need to grow our department to handle that. Because we're not at 40,000 people anymore.
Yeah, we have that challenge throughout
Throughout
whole
the city.
Yeah.
I would say, though, these are things that we're doing and paying attention to as it relates to policing in Bellingham. But we were talking about accountability earlier, and being accountable for the highest of standards as part of how we ensure that and do our part to minimize those worst case scenarios. Because we started this question with you naming a list of Black individuals that have lost their lives way too early, and that list is far too long. And I think about all the time that we're just one mistake away from something like that. And so we need to invest in those trainings, those systems, and hold people accountable to meet those standards.
Certainly.
Yep.
And the support system to help officers that are traumatized by the situations to give them a way of dealing with that.
Yeah, because they're humans too.
They
Yeah.
are
I
humans
I couldn't
too.
do it. I couldn't do policing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seeing blood, seeing death, on a consistent basis, whatever, it's traumatizing. So that's when the psychiatrist comes in handy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We want our
exactly.
officers arriving on scene with their empathy banks at full, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Mayor, council member, we are actually nearing the end of the podcast. And before we actually get to the final question, I want to do a quick legacy check question for the both of you. Let's say you both were to step down from your positions tomorrow. Considering the legacy that you both have left, what certain decisions, policies have you guys had that you would want the audience to know about, like that were part of your legacy, and what certain things maybe that are in the works right now that you guys could reveal on camera that you guys wish you guys were able to do and complete?
Do you
Well,
want to go first, Skip?
no, you go first. No. I'll go first. I am not the kind of person that like I say, I don't walk in with the answer to anything right off the bat. And so I feel that if I were to die tomorrow, I would hope that part of my legacy was to do the due diligence and the work it needs to solve the problem the right way. And I would suggest that the culture of councils is more geared towards I've got the right answer as opposed to we need to dig and get to the right answer.
Yeah.
And I hope that when I'm done with this work, that there's an element of that I can leave for the rest of my colleagues.
Wow.
I would say I hope my legacy gift to the city is around some of the culture building that we're doing right now, helping us step into this next era of being a mid-sized city as we cross 100,000 residents. And we've kind of given a name to that body of work. We're calling it One City. And I think One City to me and what we're working on is really it's an ethos of service. It's an ethos of service.
Yes.
The city team is 1,100 employees. So how are we working together? And how are we in service to each other? How are we affirming the dignity in the choice to be a public servant? I'm glad that I stepped into office and on day one started saying that this is noble work, because when we're questioning right now, like, what is the role of government and should we burn it all down? I'm glad that I've been working on creating a foundation about this is important work for the people who live in this place. And we're in service to each other and we're in service to this community, and affirming the choice to be a public servant. It's an extraordinary privilege. We are making decisions that will impact generations we can't yet imagine in this place. And so how lucky are we to get to do that work? And so really thinking about how are we in service to this place? How are we making the right decisions? And how are we showing up for each other? So I hope that will endure long after I'm gone.
Wow.
It will.
Yeah.
It will. And I as soon as I heard you say that months ago about the One City piece, it's like, that's it. That's it right there. That's what I thought. That is what our mantra has to be. One city, all working together for the common good.
Council, administrative, all the
Everything.
departments.
We all got to be going this way.
I love it when my fire chief is giving advice to my museum director. Like, I love that. Like, I want, I want everyone to think that they have a role to play and how we're making the best decisions to move forward.
And that's what makes an organization healthy.
Yeah.
Big time. From a city to a school. Mm-hmm. If everybody that works in that place feels like they're respected and they have a role to play that's valued, it's amazing what you can accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we're all human. We want to be heard, seen, loved.
Yep.
It really goes back to that.
And see the results of what you're doing.
And see the fruit of what you're doing, too.
Yeah.
Certainly. Wow. That I'm sure the audience took something away from that legacy check right there. So that's good. Well, y'all, we are at the deep end of the podcast, and I call it the deep end because this is usually the part of the podcast where I usually ask the advice question for people, of my guests. For you two, though, I'm switching it up, and it's going to be more of a vision for the future question. So, looking ahead, I know obviously we started the podcast with our hearts very heavy with what's going on, and obviously a lot of changes coming from the federal government. Much different agenda than the previous administration. But looking ahead, what is both of y'all's vision for the future for a more inclusive, equitable, thriving Bellingham, both from your respective positions? What role do you see Black residents playing in that future, other residents as a whole, and how can the city, actively support that positive, fueling success where we're making those strides and taking those actions to make things better?
There's a lot to that.
Yes, sure is.
It was a loaded question, I know.
No, it really isn't. I think one of the roadblocks, at least from my perspective, like I said, the people that I grew up, my elders, there was a sense of commonality, even though they would disagree with each other sometimes, and one guy'd be over here and one guy'd be over there. But in the end, the common good was we have got to change things so that there is more equity, there is more chances to be part of this work. And it took a while, but that's one of the things that I want to see begin to happen here is see you playing into the advisory boards and all of that, to actively go and look for people to be part of that, to be in that situation that someday they will take public office.
Yeah.
See? And be part of this whole decision making and actively impacting things that happen here. That's the key.
That's good.
Skip went deep with his response, so I'll go higher, and maybe we'll end on a joyful note, because that's part of the one city piece too. Like, all of this should be leading to joy, and we might feel far from joy at times right now, but really, like, while we're here, we're with each other, being seen, being heard, being loved, and feeling joy, I think, is part of our work. And we all own that work. And I do think the city has an important role in connecting us. I think of our investment in downtown sounds. We close a couple blocks, 5 or 6
Love downtown
nights.
sounds.
Yes,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
It's free, it's accessible, one nation under groove, one city under groove kind of concept, right? And so I think the city has important work in creating those moments too, where we can come together and just be joyful. And I think that is part of what strengthens the fabric of community.
All
and
of that
adds to that vibrancy.
You're right. And see, it's not all the time you have to be serious.
Right. You can laugh a little bit, right? Break a dance move or something.
Yeah. The other night, I'm just going to say this because I don't think I've seen you since I saw. The other night, I went to Options High School to see this play because my daughter was in it. It was half actors, well, not professionals, but adult actors, and half was from Options High School, right? So Saturday night, let's go get ice cream with the grandkids and do all this. Downtown was flooded with people. It was amazing. And that wouldn't have happened without you. I'll be honest. There was like a year and a half ago, you wouldn't see anybody there. But this one city concept and pushing forward and focusing on we've got to make things vibrant and what a city should be, it's paying dividends. It's paying dividends, and you can see it.
Certainly. Wow. What a way to close. Thank you, Mary Lund, Skip. Yeah, that was sweet. That was sweet.
Yeah.
Skip, thank you guys for your time, both of you. Before we close, before I end us on the outro, anything that you guys want to share to the audience before we wrap it up? Any last minute things? For your campaign, anything?
Oh.
It's your
Like
time.
I said, vote for me, I'll set you free. No. No. I'm not your normal politician type.
Yeah.
And so I am hoping that people see the work that I've been able to do and that they support it and want to keep me going. And I think that's going to happen. And I'm very proud to be part of this, to be part of this work and getting the right people in the right places that can make this city grow and prosper. That's my last parting shot.
It's beautiful, Skip.
Love
Thank
that. Parting words right now. Well, fun fact that I didn't share earlier, but I am a certified yoga teacher.
Oh.
And one of the tools that I draw on right now, and it's accessible to anyone at any time, is a connection with our breath. Luckily, our bodies are amazing and we can go through our days and we don't really have to think about drawing breath consciously. It just happens. But it is, I think, in times like these, an important tool that's free and accessible in any moment, in any space, for us just to reconnect with who we are at our core and kind of touch home base within ourselves and kind of recenter and recommit, like, what can I do right now in service? Can I be kind to someone? Can I, I think that's an important tool that we could all do more of right now.
Thank you both for your time. This has been an honor. Appreciate you guys both. And I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. We talked a lot. We covered a lot of things. Again, all my supporters for this podcast, thank you so much. I'm humbled to be doing this 2+ years later and to now have a freaking mayor on my podcast is incredible, as well as Skip again. So thank you both. Thank you all so much for supporting this. And stay tuned as season 5 rolls on, y'all. Until next time, peace. What is up, y'all? Thank you so much for tuning in to that episode. Make sure to click the subscribe, follow button, as well as the bell to get notified on all my new content that is coming out every Wednesday and every other day. And make sure to click that link in the description down below to get access to all my socials and any other platforms that I have my podcast on. And until next time, y'all, peace.